Yes, there's a confluence there for sure. Well, man,
Yeah.
it's great to meet you. Thank you for taking a minute out. And I want to begin our conversation with what we went through with that. It looks like that tidal wave behind you, living through a pandemic for the last 3.5 years. How did you get through that time period and how did it change you?
Well, it's a very interesting question. It changed me and a lot of people. It's like in my work and in my work is about mindfulness and being kind of present with your experiences. Did you ever notice how weird it feels to kind of walk around and feel like, for the first time in my life, that almost anybody can be a threat? This is back in early days in COVID. We didn't know if this is the Black Plague or what, right,
Yeah.
coming our way. And it's like everybody around me is like, it's like patient zero, it's kind of like, oh my God, I could get infected by something that could be fatal by anybody that I happen to be walking by.
Yeah.
Well, that's a completely different kind of experience to be walking around in the world. And it's something that we as an entire country and as a world begin to experience for the first time in our lives for most of us. And so I think that's something people don't talk about much, but it had a big impact on me.
That is such an interesting way of looking at that because I think I got COVID November of 2020, which was relatively early on.
That was
And
early. So you had the original version, right?
I had version 1.0.
1.0,
I had
COVID
win
1.0.
I had
How did
Windows
you
on floppy
do?
disk.
Yeah. People don't even know what that is.
No,
So,
yeah.
so how did it go on a scale like 1 to 10? How were you through that?
It was, in the beginning, I thought I had allergies. I went out and I was raking with my son,
That's what they
and
say. Yeah.
and the next day I get a call from the nurse, and they're like, he threw up and he's got a runny nose, no fever yet, but if there's two things, we got to go. So we did. And at that point, there was long, massive
Long
lines to get
lines.
tested.
Right. Right.
Yeah, so we went and finally got tested, and my son loves school, so he was heartbroken because it came back positive. So then I
Hmm.
had to get tested, and I mean, I was around him and I was positive, but
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I live with my wife and my stepdaughter and my mother-in-law, so none of them got it. Our genome must have been exclusive because we stayed downstairs, but it really wasn't that bad.
Good for
Um,
you.
but it was one of those things where it's like it was just strange because I didn't know where it happened. Like there was no
Yeah.
focal point of because that was when masks were starting to really become. But the way you said it's interesting because it could have just been anybody, and we
It
were
could have been
all
anybody. Yeah, you could have been just somebody walking down Safeway who sneezed in the aisle 10 seconds before you turned the corner. You
exactly.
know,
We were all ninja assailants
yeah,
without knowing it.
right.
So it's bizarre. Well, I'm curious if we boil down exactly what you do for a living. I'm going to put you in front of a bunch of third graders. It's career day, and one of the little ones looks up and asks you, "What do you do for a living?" How do you answer that child?
I would say I help people be happy.
Good. And what did you want to be in the third grade? What was your dream to grow up and become?
Oh, I don't know that I had a dream. I think I mean, in third grade, I kind of like wanted to be a Superman. I didn't have like career ambitions. It was just more like I was very much a boy. And I liked firefighters and science fiction, and I was into anything to do with space was a big
Yeah.
one. Back in the day, and so I was all about imaginary heroism.
So you grew up in Oklahoma, as you mentioned. Talk to me a little bit about the seeds that were put into you to help people. You're obviously in a position where it's not just a regular job. You're really giving a lot of yourself to help people
Yeah.
get to be happy, to get to another step. How did that happen? How did you evolve into who you are today?
Well, that's a long answer. I'm trying to figure out the short version of that. It's like,
Yeah.
I, like a lot of people, I struggled, and I learned from those struggles that if I was going to actually make real progress, I guess I would say there's something in me that's always been really interested in how things work. I mean, sort of tinkerer in my heart and soul. Like I want to take things apart. When I was a kid, I was always taking my toys apart as well as playing with them. I just wanted to see how things work. And at some point or another, the lens of that, the focus of that turned inward. And I began to go, how does this apparatus of a human being actually work?
Yeah.
What is communication? What is a relationship? What are emotions? How does my nervous system limit me and also empower me? And so I began to actually study those things in a very powerful way. So I explored the whole spectrum of things, from self-help stuff to physical exertion to martial arts to meditation. I just went through a whole range of explorations, and I found some really great teachers along the way, and I learned quite a bit. But overall, I found, and because of that work, I have a kind of a unique way of walk. I feel like it's unique. And I'm saying I'm not trying to like, oh, I'm all that, but it's like people tell me this. They say, oh, that's unique. That's interesting. Like we just started, you said, like that COVID point of view that I had about walking through the world in that way, that I get that a lot. And so I'm kind of go, oh yeah. And I think it's helpful to people when I reflect back to them, my experience of them. And, and I try to do that in a way that's empowering, and at the same time, exciting and motivating to help them kind of get a picture of who they really are in their and say, use the word soul, like their core, their essence.
Yeah.
And you asked a question in that direction when you said, what were you like when you were in third grade? That's kind of in that direction. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. So let me ask you this. As somebody that's a practitioner of happy, who's been a role model for you? Who's been a hero for you that's helped you be happy and maintain and want to excel and grow?
Well, one of my heroes who I often go back to is Nelson Mandela. And the reason is because he managed to, the people who are happy when they have everything, those people are, that's great. Good for them. Power to them. And I wish that for everyone. However, a lot of people, that's not where the rubber meets the road for a lot of people. It's we're not all born with, fat bank accounts, or do we earn them? And even though it might be just that you have one, is somehow things happen, injustices happen, people suffer, people get thrown in jail who are innocent, people wind up victims of political wars, people wind up born with problems that they can't overcome. People live a lot of challenging lives. People get COVID and never recover, and it's not their fault. None of those things are their fault. And so the question is, how do you find a way to be complete, more happy, more connected under these adverse circumstances? Nelson Mandela was in prison, tortured by his jailers for years, and his biggest concern was he would grow to hate them. And I'm going, whoa.
Yeah.
I'm going, well, wow. Now, I'm not there. Right? I would have attitudes.
Yeah.
But because he could do that, and there's all these stories that are just amazingly inspiring of how he was president, and he was at a dinner at a restaurant, and he saw one of the guards, and he invited him over to eat with them, and the guard was like trembling, he's going, because he said, he treated him so badly, and his staff were looking, why did you invite him over? He goes, because if I was mean to him, then I'm still in that prison.
Yeah.
It's like, and I just like, oh my God, that's like a level of. And he's not just doing a political stunt, it's like he's actually living this. And I'm going, well, that's what's possible. Okay.
Yeah.
So if that's the level of what's possible, then it ought to be easy for me.
Yeah. Right. Right.
And for most of us, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's incredible. His story is incredible. So speaking of incredible people, is there someone alive on the planet right now that you would love to spend time with, that you would love to meet?
Oh, whoa. Gosh, I'd like to meet Bill Gates.
Yeah.
I'm a I grew up around Microsoft technology, and he's a character who has been, behind the scenes. He's like going around to all the other billionaires, going, you need to give more money away,
Yeah.
and it's
Yeah.
like, I got to give the guy credit for that, and his foundation has saved a lot of lives.
Yeah.
And so it's like, here's a guy who wound up being incredibly wealthy through both being creative at the right time and having a lot of luck, because there's no question about he had a lot of luck coming his way too. And that all those things kind of came together and made him who he is. But then the question is, okay, now what do I do that I'm a billionaire? Who am I now, right? And so you're either someone who like hoards and distributes it internally, or you're like, hey, I'm going to help the world be a better place. And whether or not you agree with his methods, he's really working to do that.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate that. Plus, he's technical, and I'm a geek. I used to work for Microsoft, and so I'd like to talk to him about AI and some other stuff that's coming up.
I actually watched that series on Netflix, and I've always been a fan of him, and I'm a tech guy myself, but I think that he gets a lot of raw deals. I mean, he literally has stopped diseases in Africa. He has literally made water,
That's right,
reachable to people that had to do harrowing things to get it. He's done things that I don't think people understand.
no,
And
they don't.
he's a voracious reader. He's very logical. He's obviously fallible, and so are all humans,
Sure, of course.
But at the end of the day, I think there is a level of him that is way above and beyond what we can even comprehend. And I think, unfortunately, no one's going to be able to really absorb the impact of him until he's gone. I think,
Even if they do, and I think he's sort of like, I think that suits him just fine, because he's obviously not out there going, look at all the great stuff I'm doing, I'm all of that, because it's just not who he is. He's saving lives, and people don't know about it, and that's okay with him, because he's saving lives. rather than trying to be, famous for that. And that's where those are the kind of people I use as models, because it's not about the spotlight. It's about getting stuff done.
Yeah.
And so if you look at the people who are always in the spotlight, and they're always like, oh, look at all the stuff I'm doing, and I'm this and I'm that, and I'm going to Mars, and I'm just amazing. It's kind of like, it's all about you.
Yeah.
And I don't have much respect for that.
Yeah. So you're obviously changing people's lives. What is the motivation for you every day? What gets you out of bed? What gets you to help people and to ultimately be who you are, the best version of you?
People need help. People are deeply confused about who they are and how to be connected to what's powerful and true for them. And there's not a lot of, and the culture is working against them. And so, I'm trying to be a force for good in the world that helps people connect to something that's powerful and true. And that's motivating to me, because people desperately need help.
What's one of your best or favorite success stories as a coach?
Oh, it's simple. It's kind of like, one of the things I teach is like hanging out with beautiful moments that are small. Like it's kind of like the stop and smell the roses thing on steroids, right? Yeah. So there's this guy who I was a coach for, and he was a technical guy, and he's like 1,000,000 miles an hour inside, right? And I'm trying to help him by giving some assignments and some neurological training and stuff about how to just slow down and notice great small moments. And because if you add a whole bunch of those to your day, you improve your day. And also it's a pure mindfulness practice. And so he was on a ferry to Seattle, and there is this, and if you've ever ridden on these ferries, oftentimes the seagulls come and they pace the ferry, right? And so they're like flying, right? And so he's watching the seagull, and he goes, that's just a crap bird. They're everywhere. They make noise and they're all dirty. And he's like, had all these thoughts about the bird, right? But then he remembered some of the work we were doing, and he stopped, and he looked at the bird, and he watched it, and he thought, that is pretty cool.
Yeah.
Wow. is flying right along with us and is watching the bird. And suddenly he's in touch with the grace and the synchronicity and this relationship between bird and machine out in the water. And this whole, suddenly what I call seeing through. He saw through his thoughts about it, which are just dismissive, to a moment that he connected to.
Yeah.
And that became a touchstone moment for him to just hang out with these small moments and these moments where you just dismiss things immediately. Oh, that's no good. It's like, there's a saying, you can't see the forest for the trees, right? Well, look at the tree. Or like when you've seen one tree, you've seen them all. No, you haven't.
Right.
Look at that tree and like really see. And when you do that, now the reason that's powerful is because you take that same skill and you do it with people. You really look. The words are one thing, the person is another.
Well said. So you dispense a lot of good advice to your clients. What's the best advice you've ever gotten?
Well, okay, so I'm not like most people. So what works for me might not be important to everyone. But the best advice I ever got was just let things be simple.
Yeah.
Because I'm a kind of guy who I see something like, okay, so here's some eye drops, and I see this, and it's like, eye drops, wow, there's a fabrication process, and there's like the material design and all this, and the fluid inside here, and it has to be, it's like my mind goes a million directions because I have a little ADD. And so when I see something, it's never just the thing. It's like the whole ecosystem, make it really big, and
Yeah.
and the best advice I ever had was this guy, he said, just let things be simple. And he also, another version of that is don't be afraid to approach something complex in a simple way. And that has served me so well.
I always think about that when I see the insignia for KISS. Keep it simple, stupid. That's the whole. It's crazy. So, speaking of good advice and mindfulness and wisdom, if you had a dream tonight, you ran into the senior in high school version of you, and you could give that young version of you a piece of advice based on the wisdom you've gained in your life, what advice would you dispense on that young version of you?
Buy Bitcoin.
There you go. More Microsoft stock.
I remember looking at Bitcoin when it was like $1, and everybody's like, "Oh, this cryptocurrency stuff is bullshit." It's like no one's ever going to buy that stuff.
Yeah.
It's hoax. And I'm going, and I had my hand on the button, going for like, I'll just buy 100 of these,
Yeah.
and see what happens.
Why not?
Oh my God, $30,000 a coin now, right?
I happen to run into that episode Back to the Future 2 when he had the almanac, and I always think about that with Bitcoin.
Yeah,
It's right here, just bet on this horse.
Yeah, but with the non-snarky version of that would be something like, just be kind to yourself.
Yeah,
because I'm pretty tough on myself about, well, you're not getting enough done. It's like, kind of drive more than I probably should in terms of internally. And there's a critic like in me that's like, oh, you need to be doing. And I look at my project list, it's overburdened, and that's the result of that. So I'm always working the edge of trying to. Here I am, a coach in mindfulness and being present and more spacious, and I create a world where I'm stressed because of all the things that I decide to do. And so it's like, what's up with that?
Yeah, for sure. So of all of the things that you've done and accomplished in your life, what are you the proudest of?
That sends me inside to check, because I'm not sure. Well, that's a difficult one to say, because there's inner accomplishments that are difficult to talk about in relational ways, and there's outer accomplishments. I think if I had to say skill-wise, I think it's if I really decide to connect with someone, that there's something in me that really creates I don't know what I'm going to call a vibe that makes that possible. And there's skills involved. It's not just, there's sexual skills involved. There's technique, but then there's also who you are. And so
Right.
there's a way that I can show up when I choose to, where I can just sort of be present in a way that facilitates not only the other person but myself, and that's really really satisfying to me. And I guess I would say I'm kind of proud of having forged the capacity to have those experiences, because it was something I set out to create,
Yeah.
and and I wish I could just give it away, and I do, but I don't give it away. You have to do the work.
Yeah.
I can't award it to you. You have to do the work.
So I guess that's a natural extension of my next question, which is everyone out there has this perception of you, an idea of you, your clients, your family, your friends,
Yeah.
but you ultimately run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
Who do I think I am?
Yeah.
Well, I'm a I know these things about myself. I'm a really caring person. I have a lot of empathy. I have a very sensitive nervous system. And I care about people, and I want to be super helpful. Those things are absolutely authentically core to who I am. And I also know I'm probably smarter than the average bear, because I've always made, A's and B's and didn't work that hard at it. So just by social comparison, I'm like, not the dullest bulb in the room when it comes to that. And I'm not judging anybody on that
Sure.
scale. I'm just like noticing, oh, okay, yeah, these have an A and these other people have don't. And it wasn't hard. And so it's kind of like that kind of experience for most of my life. Um, I'm musical. I like music. I like to create and sing. So all those things kind of flow through me. I like to tinker. I love to put things together. So those are kind of on the bright side, and there's the whole darker side as well. I'm
Right.
critical, and I can be a little harsh at times, strangely enough, and um, I'm not always as patient as I could be with people.
Yeah.
But however, whatever degree that is today, wow, I was a jerk when I was younger. I was just, the smart ass guy, who knows a bunch and is just a smart ass about it.
Yeah.
And I had to work to crack that nut.
So speaking of music, loving music, what's been the best music concert that you've ever seen in your life?
That I ever saw in my life. Oh, wow. Well, what's strange about that is that may have just happened. I went to Peter Gabriel's on tour right now,
Wow.
and I just went to see his most recent tour, and it blew me away
Wow.
because of the artistry involved. The musicians were all unbelievable, and each song was not only a song, but there was he had invited artists from around the world to create experiences on stage
Wow.
for each song. And so he would say, this is by this amazing artist in New Guinea, and people you've never heard of, because that's kind of his thing, is like his international coalition. And he would say, here's this amazing artist from Uganda. And there'd be this giant screen experience, plus maybe dancers and other stuff going on, and it's very understated. It's not like in terms of like you don't think of Peter Gabriel as being like a big show experience for like in terms of arena experiences, but it totally is. And I just saw that, and that was on my list of like one of the best shows I've ever seen.
Wow, that's amazing. I'm not surprised. His artistry is something that's just unbelievable, off the charts.
Well, yeah, I mean, he's been way out there ever since his early days with Genesis, and I was a fan back in the day. And I'm going, these guys are really onto something. I don't know what, but it's
Yeah.
really, who knows what half these songs are even about, but it's like still very interesting.
Yeah.
And then later on, he went on to do so much great work. But he's kind of like Bill Gates in a way. It's like it's not there's his artistry, but what he does with his success is really really big, and a lot of people don't know about it. He has a whole label that uh, is a incubator for success and visibility and elevating the availability of amazing artists and musicians around the globe who otherwise don't have a commercial vehicle to them because standard channels don't work for them.
Yeah. So you have these very intriguing and fascinating insights, and I'm curious if we get off the call here and a time machine pulls up, and you could go back in time and see any event in human history with your own eyes. Where are you going? What do you want to see?
Whoa. The Nicaea Council, the creation of the New Testament, the creation of the Bible,
Yeah.
that group has done more to influence history than probably any other group.
Yeah.
And I'd really like to know a lot more about how that happened because I don't
That's
think we know
fascinating.
the full story.
That will be an answer I will never hear again. That's wonderful. So, if anyone out there wants to hire you, learn more about you, reach out, what is the best way for them to do that?
Mindfulcoach.com is my main website, and there people can connect with me to either do one-on-one sessions because I do mindful communications coaching, or if you're a coach or professional who would like to learn more about it, I actually have a whole 8-week course I call the Mindful Coach Method that goes really deep and powerful into the kinds of things I'm talking about, how to help people be more who they are. And you have to do that. You have to do the work yourself. And so there's a process of doing both of those things in the method. And also I have an organization called the Mindful Coach Association, and it's literally the mindfulcoachassociation.com. And it's free to join for any coaches who or professionals who do work with others that value mindfulness in their life and their work.
Wonderful. Brett, this has been fascinating. Thank you so much for your story, for your time. Best of luck with everything. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, sir.